So today we've got a quick lesson on the Swiss Army triplet, how we can use that and other rudiments in our playing. But first, before we get there, I just wanted to take a second and say a quick thank you to everyone for the comments and the emails and the messages and the backing and support for this Kickstarter thing. In under 24 hours, we were over 60% there for the new studio. Thank you so much. And the lesson will start in just 1 second, but I just wanted to tell you, I spoke with Andy over at Alclair in-ears, and he has agreed we're gonna extend the giveaway. So we're not just giving away one pair of in-ears, which is a $650 value. For every person that backs over $25, for every 100 people, we're giving away one pair, okay? So, and that starts over every 100 people. And if you've already backed and given above $25, then you're already entered into one of those. So your chances of winning always remain the same. They're always gonna be a great chance of winning. Again, that's one every 100 backers over $25. Thank you so much. Like Kelly and I started tearing up last night reading all of the responses. The team could not believe it. Joshua and Tim, we just cannot believe the love that this community has shown. Thank you so much. There's some great deals on choruses, some great rewards levels on Drum Better Daily passes and all of those things. So please go grab them while they're there. There's a limited edition t-shirt that's there. There's pre-buy for future in-person camps, a couple of lifetime access things there. I don't know if they're still available anymore, but again, some of them expiring, and I'm not sure how long the giveaway will continue, but for right now, for every 100 backers, we're planning on giving away one pair of in-ears, the same ones that I use. It's a $650 value, so thank you. I hope you enjoy this lesson. The sheet music's below. So one of the biggest questions I get is applying rudiments to the drum kit. Like, how do we do that? And for me, I wondered myself, and then I've just kind of come up with different, what I call assembly lines. If you've heard me teach, or if you're in the Drum Better Daily Members Program, you hear me talking about things like assembly lines, and that's just an organized process that I can put things through that makes them look like other things in my playing. So in other words, I can do steps 1 through 10, and it looks just like the paradiddle looks in my playing as far as having the facility around the kit. And so that's just kind of an organized way that I work. I actually have I believe a paradiddle lesson here on YouTube that's on that. So I wanted to do a similar lesson, and this is called the Swiss Army triplet. And one of the ways that I incorporate rudiments into my drumming is I just kind of play around with them. So I try to find things that I like and influences that maybe I can pull some rudiments into. And even if I'll never use that per se on a gig, like this group I'm teaching, I may never use that on a gig, but the concepts I may pull out at some point. So very simply, the Swiss Army triplet is one of my favorite rudiments. It's a same hand rudiment. That means the hand you start on is the hand you're going to end on. So it's going to be a right-handed flam, right, left. You can also do them off the left hand. All right, and they call it a dirty roll because really when you isolate the hands, it's just double strokes. And so my Swiss Army triplet went from here to way up here as I poked myself in the face with my stick. Whenever I realized that this, if we take them and merge them together, we get a Swiss Army triplet. So then I thought, well, if I can roll like that, then my Swiss Army triplets should be able to go almost as fast. So there I am going from rolls into a Swiss Army triplet. That's a whole other lesson. Gosh, I should have saved that one. So now we're going to take the Swiss Army triplet and weird things happening. We're going to take the Swiss Army triplet and we're going to utilize it to a groove. Another one of my big influences is second line. So I lived in New Orleans for about 3 years and I grew up in the Deep South, not far from New Orleans. So that whole So that whole blah, 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 blah. Well, the cool thing about the Swiss Army triplet is it's got that, it's got that dotted eighth note feel. And so, and what I want to do is extend that. So we're going to play 4 Swiss Army triplets, and I'm going to call these chunks. I talk about chunks in my teaching a lot too. A chunk is just a sticking. It's a grouping of notes. And so one chunk is going to be a Swiss Army triplet, all right? But we're going to treat that in 3 different ways. So the first way we're going to treat it, we're going to put the right hand on the hi-hat, and we're going to, on every one of these, we're going to, instead of accenting the downbeat, we're going to accent the second note. All right, so accenting that second note, it's gonna, if I add my next sticking, which the next sticking is gonna be a right, left, or excuse me, right, right, left. All right, so I'm going to begin to think of these in different chunks. Why? Because I can move them around, and I'll show you that in just a second. So the first thing I'm going to do on the first chunk, or first Swiss Army triplet, I'm going to put a kick drum on that downbeat. And not only am I going to do that, I'm going to raise the hi-hat with the accent. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a second chunk. The second chunk is going to be just as we've been playing it. It's going to go the first one, second one, the third chunk that I'm going to have is I'm going to play the first chunk, but I'm going to add a kick drum to it, okay? So these are still Swiss Army triplets. I'm just thinking in chunks so that I can organize them in my mind, all right? So the third piece we're going to have and then I'm going to repeat the second version of the Swiss Army triplet, or the second chunk. So it's going to go. So we've got a fun little pattern there, right? We've got a fun groove that we can play. Now you can also swing that in that. Let's do like a second line style. You could swing that 3, 4.
But you can have a lot of fun with it. Now, what I love to do now is I like to move the elements around. So my first step in my assembly line is I'm going to just learn each chunk by itself, right? Chunk 1 is the first way we treat the Swiss Army triplet. Chunk 2 is the second way we treat the Swiss Army triplet, and we repeat that one twice, right? Chunk 3 is the third way we treat the Swiss Army triplet, and then we have the right, left sticking. So chunk 1, chunk 2, chunk 3, repeat chunk 2, and then chunk 4. Now, having those elements in that way, now I can move them around because now I have these individual elements I can move around like Lego blocks, okay? So what I'm going to do is step 1 is going to be learn each of the chunks. Step 2 is put them together at slow tempo into a groove. Step 3 is put them at full tempo into a groove, learn to improvise around a little bit with them. Now, what I'm going to do now is move them in a logical way. So I'm going to think of these, and I have 4 of the Swiss Army triplets, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th thing. So I'm going to take the 5th item, the right, left, and I'm going to move it before the 4th Swiss Army triplet. So Swiss trip, Swiss trip, Swiss trip, the different sticking and Swiss trip, right? So all the same elements, now we're just moving them around. So I'll play that at full tempo and let you hear what that sounds like. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so now we can take those chunks and move them even further. So let's do the same order, but let's move it logically in a grid. So we're gonna move that last sticking over one more. So we have this, it's gonna go. Let me play that at full tempo for you so you can see what that second variation sounds like. 1, 2, 3, 4. The third variation, as you have guessed on our assembly line, right? We have it learn each individual chunk and sticking, then learn it slowly, then learn it faster at full tempo, and we learn to improvise a little bit. The 4th one is variation 1, 5th one, variation 2, 6th one is variation 3. Variation 3, we're gonna take that last sticking and move it over one more time. So we have a Swiss Army triplet, the last sticking, Swiss trip, Swiss trip, Swiss trip. So now it sounds like this. Let me play that up to full tempo so you can see what that sounds like at about 95 BPM. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the last permutation of this, permutations are where we take the same elements, we just rearrange them. So in other words, we're not breaking the Swiss triplets up. All the stickings are staying intact. We're just moving the elements around. That's the difference between a permutation and a combination. I actually have a whole book called Functioning in Time on permutations and combinations and how we treat them. David Garibaldi talks about it also in his book, Future Sounds. It's a great book. So now we can take that last sticking, and now it's the first sticking followed by 4 Swiss Army triplets. So we have that last sticking. So that goes 1E and a. So we have that last sticking, and all we've done is we now have 5 different variations, the original groove, and then variation 1, 2, 3, and 4, where we move that last sticking over on a grid, very logical, okay? So what the assembly line to me would look like this. Learn the individual stickings, or chunks as I call them. Learn it at a slow tempo, be able to play it smoothly. Then step 3 is learn it at the tempo you're aiming for. In this lesson, I'm doing about 95 BPM. Learn to improvise, add some fills to it. Then step 4 is variation 1. Step 5 is variation 2. Step 6 is variation 3, and step 7 is variation 4, and that brings us all the way back to the original groove. Now the fun thing is we can take and we can move these elements around, and I know that as long as I play 4 Swiss triplets and one of the last sticking, the right, right, left, then I have a measure of music, so then I can improvise very easily. And what that allows me to do is that allows me to make different groupings of notes and know where I am in the measure. And so I can solo over that, I can improvise over that, all that stuff. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a direction for how to utilize different rudiments and become creative with it, all right? There's no magic button with this. You just have to begin to take them and in a logical, sensible way, move them around and begin to improvise with them, begin to add the new things like rudiments to old things that are familiar, like I showed you with this one. That came off of that rhythm that's really based off of the clave, that is the come from the New Orleans vibe, right? It'd be very simple for me to play a second line. In that kind of a second line feel. So that was my inspiration for that whole groove. And then what grew out of that was all those permutations, all those different things. So take, and like you would Lego blocks, play with the things that you like, all right? And that's gonna be taking those rudiments and just really becoming creative. Then finding an organized way, an assembly line, taking the different chunks and putting them in the places where they need to be. So hopefully this has stretched you a little bit. Learn that the sheet music, if you want the sheet music to this lesson, it is below this in a pinned comment as well as in the video description. Please go pick that up, I beg of you. It'll help you figure that out and hopefully to unlock some creative avenues in your mind for what you can use. You can also take that accent, put it on the ride cymbal bell, which is a lot of fun too. As well, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, turn on those post notifications. Lots of new lessons and drumming content coming every week. Leave me a comment. I want to hear from you. I read every one of those. If you have questions, any of that stuff, I try to answer as many as I possibly can. But no matter what you do, I'll see you here in the next video.